Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Feeling Seen, the podcast that talks about the movies that make us feel seen. And today, my co-host is, and has been, for going on more than a decade now, just really one of the coolest, I think, most exciting people in filmmaking. Tone, sensibility, project choice, seemingly creative desires. You might know them from their writing and directing efforts, such as I Don't Feel at Home in This World Anymore and the new Toxic Avenger, as well as other screenplay endeavors, including Hold the Dark, directed by Jeremy Saulnier, his frequent collaborator, the film Brothers, and episodes of television. He's also an actor. You may have seen him leading the excellent, canonically classic revenge film Blue Ruin. You may have seen him in Green Room, Logan Lucky, or even the juggernaut that was Oppenheimer. Macon, Blair, Renaissance man. What else do the people need to know about you before we get started today?
What a fucking introduction that was. I'm going to send that to my family. I like how I skipped right past guest and went to co-host.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, I'm glad to be here. Thank you for having me.
Now, it's crazy to list those things off. What is it like to kind of hear your credits just sort of fired off like that? The process of becoming a career filmmaker can take so long. And even when you are a career filmmaker, I know from people I know, it's kind of hard to settle into the notion that yeah, this is what I do for a job and another job's going to come. And I'm going to keep working and this is something I can sustainably do. And then you hear somebody rattle off your credits in kind of succession like that. And it's oh yeah, I'm booked, I'm busy, I'm a professional, I've been doing this all for years and years and years. The difference between hearing something come at you so fast of all the things you've done compared to the long amount of work that it takes to get there and the lag time in between things that can happen when you spend so many years working on each project, I would imagine.
The fact that you're even bringing that up is remarkable because, yeah, just hearing all that stuff in one sort of paragraph was a little strange because from my point of view, it's always kind of scrambling for whatever the next thing is. Right. And it's also I was probably in my maybe late 30s or early 40s before I really comfortably felt okay, this is how I'm supporting my family.
Yeah.
And up until that point, it was sort of juggling a lot of different things, and every now and again, there would be a project, but it was certainly kind of a late blooming situation. So I feel very lucky on one hand, and then on the other hand, I also kind of just am constantly focused on whatever the next thing is, because it always seems vaguely impossible and a little bit out of reach and certainly not guaranteed. And
right,
so
yeah.
It's there's never really been a moment to be kind of fucking nailed it, and then we'll take a break. There's always a vague undertone of panic.
Well, yeah, because rattling off all that in a sentence, it's oh yeah, he never had a doubt. He knew he was a success. This
False.
was a gainful employment career from the very beginning.
False.
Myth busted.
Not true. Yeah, and the thing is that whatever the thing is at the moment, that and I think a lot of people would maybe say the same thing, but that's the only thing that exists. And
yes.
I've completely forgotten about whatever it was that came before it, and I definitely have no notion of what's going to come next. It's all kind of this one very precious and special thing that's going on right there at that moment, and everything else kind of fades away a little bit. So having a picture of the whole scope of things is not that's not something I do a great deal of.
Yeah. On the topic of right now, would you have ever conceived of making your Toxic Avenger film, which is your new film you have coming out?
No, not at all. But in a weird way, with the benefit of hindsight, it feels correct because I saw the movie at the time when you probably should see it. I was 12 or maybe 13, a young kid, watched it with my friends. It made this huge impression on us for two reasons. One was sort of how absurd and ridiculous and silly it was, and the way they were kind of using violence for like cartoonish comedy effect and just a kind of sensibility that was kind of like, for a 12-year-old kid, it was very amusing. And we were starting to make our own movies, and to a certain degree, that kind of found its way into our movies. It was also, although I didn't have the vocabulary for it at the time, I think it was like around the first time that I saw a movie that seemed like it was independently made.
Right.
And we all loved movies, but they all were kind of like Hollywood movies. And they seemed very far away, and this kind of seemed very attainable. And so there was something about that I think it got baked into this group of friends that had like a VHS camera and some costumes, and we would try to make our own movies after school and on the weekends. So it was definitely there at that time, but it was never something that I carried forward like I want to do this one day or whatever. But what happened was, when they started soliciting pitches for the screenwriting job, which would have been about like 2019, there was something about it that seemed like this is a way to go back to that era of making movies with my buddies that were very silly and ridiculous in seventh grade, except for this would be with actual lights and real actors. And so there was something that felt kind of full circle about that aspect of it. Not necessarily like one day I'm going to make this, but just kind of like, oh yeah, here's this thing from my past that feels appropriate somehow.
That reminds me of the conversation that I got to have with Ty West when he came on, because he picked Dead Alive, and he talked about how like watching those early Peter Jackson splatter movies, where he really got the sense for the first time that a movie was something you could make with people you knew. And like, oh wait, like we can dick around and a bunch of us make, like, obviously if I'm watching Goodfellas, like amazing, but like this feels like something that people like me made in their backyard. And then I think of how like the movies that he went on to like launch his career with, like that early 2010s era of like the Adam Wingard, Ty West, the VHS movies, and the movies that really kicked those off being that sense of like getting the band together and making something that's like a labor of love among a like fraternity, sorority of people willing to go in on it together, and these really lo-fi efforts that punched above their weight with movies like the VHS franchise. So it's always cool to hear filmmakers talk about like those seeds of like when they really believed it was possible, like the kinds of movies that made them realize, hey, this isn't just like something that I like, it's something that I could do myself.
It's funny to hear him say that. That's exactly what I sent Jeremy a text from set when we were shooting the movie, and I'm paraphrasing, but it was something along the lines of like, it is as if they let me make one of our high school movies, but like fucking Kevin Bacon's in it. So that's the difference, but it has the exact sort of shopping list as those movies we were making back then.
I was excited about Your Toxic Avenger, and then I watched it, and I like I'm a fan of the stuff you make, but I like this one like even more than I realized I would. Like the absurdity, like not because I was like I wasn't expecting it to underperform, but it was like, God damn it, this is really funny. Like, of course it's it's funny watching such a like maximalist presentation of this Toxic Avenger and being like, I can see how this is from the same guy who made I Don't Feel at Home in This World Anymore. Like the kind of sensibility of the characters together, the sense of humor. And there was like Peter Dinklage is just so good. It feels like everyone is so completely bought in to the maximalism absurdity of the movie, and it's fast and it's funny and it is so much damn fun, and it feels like a kind of fun, like you said, like the movies that we grew up on, in the way that I'm looking forward to the new Naked Gun movie. Like, damn, I'm like looking forward to and getting exciting about these movies now that feel like they're cooking with some of the old recipes in a really exciting way.
Absolutely. Well, Naked Gun was, obviously we were talking about the original Toxie a lot, and then to a lesser extent, like some of the other early Trauma stuff like Nukem High, but certainly the Zucker Abrams movies, Naked Gun and Airplane and Top Secret, that was, we were talking about that a lot when we were making this one, just as a like, is it a superhero movie, or is it a horror movie, or is it a revenge movie? And I was like, no, it's none of that. It's just a straight middle of the road comedy was sort of what we were going for. And it has little bits of that in there. There's monsters and goopy stuff, but just wanted to treat it like a straight up and down comedy.
Well, and okay, and so speaking of comedy, and something that like honestly, like there's a case to be made for Your Toxic Avenger feeling it's just like a fun like hanging out at home movie, like just like a chilling out and having a good time with a like popcorn and pizza at home. And then the character that you've brought to discuss comes from one of the great hangout movies ever to be made. And so please tell us who you've brought to discuss today.
Well, who I brought to discuss, I'm so glad that you described it that way. When we were developing it, they said, "What do you want this movie to be?" And I said, "I want this movie to be a bong hit movie.
Yeah, for real.
Live in perpetuity in college dorms." But the movie that to discuss today, I had a hard time kind of thinking about it because I wouldn't say I've ever sort of like, watched a movie and been like, "Oh, that's exactly my experience," except for this one time. And actually, I have it since I emailed with you guys. I thought of two others.
Okay, well, let's bring them up. Let's bring them in.
The first one off the tip of my tongue was Dazed and Confused, which for me, the Wiley Wiggins character, Mitch, when I saw that and I was like, I don't know, I was probably like 18 or 19 when that movie came out, and I had just finished up high school, and what he kind of went through in that movie, obviously that was the 70s for me. This was like later than that, but and there was not overt hazing, like nobody was getting paddled, but other than that, the dynamics of just sort of like hanging out in the woods and sort of gathering in parking lots unsupervised was very much my experience. And the thing about him was that when he gets into this, school is let out, so it's the summertime, but he kind of has these older kids that sort of take him under their wing, and he kind of gets brought along and swept up into this upperclassman sort of like, this is what we do now.
Yeah.
Hey man, look, since the party's not going on, me and some of the other guys will probably end up just riding around. You want us to stop by and pick you up?
What, you think that's a good idea?
Oh yeah, sure man, no problem. Even after you've gotten it bad, the guys who haven't got you yet will give you a few days to rest. It'd be a pretty cool move to show up and let them know it doesn't bother you that much.
Yeah, okay, cool.
See you later?
Yeah, sure. Thanks for the ride, man.
Hey man, put some ice on it for a while. After that, it won't be anything if your beers can't take care of.
That felt very familiar to me because for whatever reason, there were these older kids that would like let me drive their cars and like, they were able to buy beer and stuff like that. And so I was like the young kid that got to hang around with some of these like cooler kind of like skater older kids who were seniors or whatever at the time. And I felt very elevated and sort of like, oh my God, I'm with the cool kids. And then when that movie came out and he kind of had a version of that, it felt eerily similar to me.
Hey, hop in, man.
Hey, man, whose car?
You know Wooderson?
Oh.
How's it going, man?
Hey. Pretty good. How's it going with you?
Say, man, you got a joint?
No, not on me, man.
It'd be a lot cooler if you did.
It feels like Mitch kind of like, you can imagine him by the time he graduates high school or by the time he's an upperclassman, just kind of knows everybody. Like,
yes.
I kind of imagine him just sort of like, you can drop him into any pond in this movie, and whether it's the Emporium or whether it's hanging out with his like freshman friends who he's coming up with from middle school, or he like meets a sophomore girl who turns out to be kind of sweet on him. He's just kind of always himself, and he doesn't look necessarily like the most chill and comfortable, but he's super adaptable throughout the movie. And I watched it this time thinking more than ever, like, Mitch is a cool guy.
Yeah.
Psst. Hey, Mitch.
Hey, there you guys are.
Hey, man, what's in the bag?
Sixer. You owe me one, man.
Yeah, they busted the hell out of Hirschfelder, too.
Yeah, I heard.
Hey, man, you over at the Emporium?
Oh, yeah.
Hey, is that bastard O'Bannon over there?
Yes. I hate that jerk. Do you guys want to get him back?
Hell yes.
Were you the kind of floater guy in high school too? Like, could you kind of mix it up with anybody? Like, could you just kind of fit wherever you were placed?
To a certain extent, I wouldn't say I ever felt comfortable or cool, but I did kind of like, I did theater, so I was with the sort of the drama group, and then I was also with the more sort of shenanigans based pothead group, and then I was with there were all these little clusters, and there really was not a lot of friction between the groups. It's not like you couldn't, like a lot of people did that. It's not like if you were in one sort of group you couldn't cross over to the other one. That everybody to a certain degree kind of got along. But yeah, I definitely did kind of bounce around a lot at that time.
Well, and watching it too, thinking of it in terms of like the idea of like you saying Toxic Avenger is like a bong hit movie. Like I think that's a great I want this to play in dorms I want Toxic Avenger to play in many a dorm for eons to come kind of thing.
That's my hope. Yeah.
And I was watching it thinking about how like Richard Linklater has just made this career of kind of like defying what it feels like you're told you're supposed to do to sell a movie in terms of conflict, in terms of like, and then this twist has to happen, and then you pull the rug out from under people here, and he makes these movies that are really life unfolding. And it's so cool watching when Everybody Wants Some came out, kind of among people I knew a little bit younger than me, kind of recapturing that sense of like my friends and I growing up watching Dazed and Confused. I feel like them feeling a bit like Everybody Wants Some as we did about Dazed, and like that sense of there's not like an overabundance of those movies to choose from that keep coming out, like movies where you just get to glide through without a central antagonist and experience people's lives. And obviously Boyhood was a phenomenal feat of filmmaking. And then I thought of your films, your starring turn in Blue Ruin, like a very unlikely revenge story. And I've read you talking to Jeremy about like, shouldn't this be like a big guy who's like fitting that kind of like Joe Don Baker kind of, and it was like, no, the point is that it's not him. And then I don't feel at home in this world anymore, being such a melange of genres and kind of like an unexpected piece with two of the most sort of like wonderful unexpected actors in terms of tone, in terms of like Melanie Linsky and Elijah Wood. And I wanted to talk to you about like making movies that if like in their elevator pitch, they, you hear something compelling, but then you watch the movie and the process of them unfolding doesn't actually feel like what we've come to expect from the tropes that we've necessarily been given in the genres that you've been playing in.
Yeah. On the Linklater thing, I've admired him for so long, and he actually, a while ago when I applied to join the DGA, he was my sponsor and signed my card, which felt very very special to me. Also, just if you haven't read it, there's a great oral history of the making of Dazed and Confused. I think it's called All Right, All Right, All Right. And they interview everybody, and it goes through just the production, getting it made, him kind of going from slacker into more of a studio environment and sort of the challenges there. A great read.
Oh, cool.
For Blue Ruin, that's all Jeremy.
Sure.
He's just a smart dude with like managing what we had available to us. He kind of took stock of like, we have this cabin in the woods. That was my cousin. There was a car in his driveway that he felt like we could use, and his dad wasn't going to notice. And we had a couple of things, and he worked that into this script that he felt he could get maximum value out of, knowing that we had like very little money. And so he designed it that way. And one of the things, luckily enough for me, was putting me in that part.
Right, that was written for you, wasn't it?
It was written for me,
yeah.
But that's why the guy is sort of like, I mean, it's I feel like it's an inventive way into the revenge genre, like a guy that doesn't know what he's doing, and it's all about him sort of fumbling through it. But that was in part because it was going to be me, and so a guy kicking in doors and kicking a lot of ass was not going to be plausible with me in the lead. And so it was sort of, I think it was a little bit of both, but he designed it that way with the result very much in mind. And I just like it even when I read it, I was like, how is this? It took me a minute to get it, but he always knew what he was going for, and totally pulled that off. And And then for Don't Feel at Home, I just had this idea that like, look, there's no guarantee that I'll get to do a second movie. And so we better put them all, like everything I want to do, we better do it here. And I knew I wanted to do a crime story, but I also knew I wanted it to be kind of romantic and kind of funny, but maybe not a ha-ha comedy. And so all of that was just me kind of like, I better get it out of my system now because there may not be another opportunity to do that. So however it landed was a result of me just trying to push everything out the door all at the same time.
Well, I mean, and we're better for it. And there was, you know, something too that I was thinking when I was watching Dazed and Confused was it gives you a timestamp at the beginning of the movie. It's like last day of school, this day, this year, this time. Yeah. So you're really just with these people from like the beginning of a school day until the very, like the next morning when the sun comes up after everybody's partied and celebrated the beginning of the summer. And just thinking a lot about the difference in sort of media and how we absorb it now. This is such a perfect example of like just the isolation of being present that was just the default setting. That wasn't something we had to think about. It's just sort of how we were. And being somebody who grew up at a time when, like, you know, you first start realizing that you and your friends, like, you can make movies that seem like Toxic Avenger, and you're watching Dazed and Confused as a teenager, and then coming in, like, furthering into your filmmaking career when the media environment changes so much, and perhaps how people who are in charge and writing checks, how they understand media absorption and what, like, the mandate of that might be for creators. Like, I guess I wanted to hear about the sort of value for you of the way you could have kind of a very horse blinders existence in terms of like growing up a kid watching Toxic Avenger and realizing what was possible and being Mitch Kramer, just kind of like vibing through the landscape.
Yeah, I mean, what I know is that I feel terribly, terribly lucky that I think I was in around a generation that just got in under the wire as far as phones and connectivity and social media and like that, like I was already sort of like into my adult life before that became a thing. And I can't imagine being a teenager now. And like, on one hand, it was, I really loved the idea that like, you didn't know where anybody was. And that's what that movie did so well, was like, you just drive around. Like in my town, it was, you go to the 7-Eleven parking lot and maybe somebody else is there. And maybe they're like, people are meeting up at this parking lot or this patch of the woods or whatever it is. But also maybe nobody was there, and then you don't get anything to do that night. And you know, you just kind of rolled the dice. And that was, I really liked that kind of existence. That, and also the fact that, you know, not everything was being recorded and solicited for likes or feedback, which is like, it's the way it is. But like even now, as a grown-up, that shit fills me with so much anxiety. I cannot imagine being a 16-year-old and sort of like, you know, getting comments on everything that I'm going to post, or having everything I do or say be archived and logged and live on the internet in perpetuity. Like I couldn't, me personally, I couldn't see being able to deal with that. And so there was like this great ignorance is bliss of just kind of like, no one knows what we're doing. It's going to be forgotten by Monday. It doesn't, you know, it had this great sort of like freedom to it, at least from my perspective, that I really treasure. And I'm glad that I sort of like got in just under the wire before that sort of dominated how people relate to each other. Not that there's not great things about that too. I'm just saying, like, for me, I guess I'm sort of looking back with rose-colored glasses, but that's kind of how I think about it.
Hey, little brother. Is that a beer in your hand?
Well, yes, it is.
Have you had more than one of those tonight?
Well, a few, I guess. Nobody's counting.
Hey, how you doing?
Hi.
Guess I might as well just get used to you being at the same social functions as me, huh? And hanging out with people I know. Hey, what time are you supposed to be home, anyway?
Oh, geez, I don't know. A couple hours ago.
That's bullshit. That's major bullshit. Do you know Mom barely even let me out of the house when I was your age? Oh. Hey, don't think for a minute she's not going to be waiting up for you when you get home, because she will be. I've been through it.
Yeah, well.
And she's tough.
Just
Don't ask her to take it easy on me, please.
What's that supposed to mean? Take it easy on him?
Let's go smoke that joint.
He's in for a surprise.
You were hanging out with the theater kids in high school, you said. And so when did this go from something where it was like, I like doing this stuff with my friends, to like, I think I'm going to do this forever?
Without any kind of a real plan or steps about like how this is going to work, I wanted to do it forever for as long as I can remember. Now, I didn't know if that meant being a writer. I didn't know if that meant being an actor. Like, I didn't know if that meant being a director. I knew I wanted to work in movies in some capacity. You know, at the time, what that capacity was this group of friends that, like, Jeremy would tend to direct, and he would tend to put me in things that he was making, and but we would also all kind of trade hats and you know, fulfill different roles on set and stuff like that. So, and then that same group of people moved to New York, and we all got day jobs, and some were kind of industry adjacent, and some were just paying the bills.
Yeah.
And then we would try to write scripts. We would, you know, if we were working on a job during the week, we would borrow their camera equipment or their 16 millimeter short ends and go shoot our own stuff on the week. Just sort of beg, borrow, and steal. and that was kind of like, you know, that was like 15 years of just short films and auditions and writing spec scripts that, you know, you have a difficult time getting anyone to even read, let alone like the shit is not getting made.
Yeah.
But we had this really tight group of friends that were all kind of working together, and that's what sustained it. And that's what eventually fed into the production of Blue Ruin and onward. But I mean, it really was, in a sort of a roundabout way, an extension of what we started doing when we were in, like, you know, 7th grade or something like that.
We are going to take a quick break, but I will be right back with Macon Blair, and I will ask about some of the runner-up character picks he considered choosing. Plus, we will talk more about how his Toxic Avenger remake became a reality. And then at the end, I will have one quick thing about a semi-related kind of topic. I want to recap my weekend at the Big Bad Film Festival in Glendale, California, which is an action cinema cornucopia. So we're going to check in on that at the end. Stick around.
On Judge John Hodgman, the courtroom is fake, but the disputes are real.
Brian would say, I'm the Gumby of this family. He's just not.
Claiming to be Gumby is an un-Gumby-like claim.
No, it's just Gumby and I being our authentic selves.
So what's your complaint? Too many sauces?
There are no foods on which to put the sauces.
Have we named all the sauces on the top shelf yet?
Not even close.
You economize when it comes to pants.
Truly, it's not about the cleanliness of the pants.
Well, why isn't it? This is what I want to know. Judge John Hodgman, Fake Court, Weird Cases, Real Justice. On MaximumFun.org, YouTube, and everywhere you get podcasts.
You can't really know if your own show is any good.
So I asked my kids about ours. Is Jordan Jesse Go a good show?
No, definitely not. It's really bad.
I would say out of 10, maybe like a 4 out of 10.
It's just really boring.
Yeah, 0.
Subscribe to Jordan Jesse Go,
a comedy show for grown-ups.
Now, I don't want to let it get away, but I want to ask about other characters that had come to your mind in the intervening time after you did say Mitch. Who else has been on your mind?
In the same way, because it sort of had that same kind of latchkey kid, unsupervised thing.
So unsupervised.
But Gary Valentine in Licorice Pizza.
Oh, that's right. Yes.
So he was one. And then another one that occurred to me that this has nothing to do with characters. But in fact, today, before we had this show, I was doing errands and it just popped into my head and I kind of remembered this thing that I had as a younger person. I think it was like end of high school through my 20s where I just had this vague, like I was either wondering about it or I had a feeling or it was kind of like an unspecified fear. But what if this is all coordinated and staged and being observed? And then at a certain point, The Truman Show came out.
So you had that thought before The Truman Show. You were like, simulation.
I did. And I was getting, oh God, I'm going to forget the title of it. There was a magazine. It wasn't called Screenplay, but it was a magazine that it was a quarterly, and each quarter it would produce, it would give you 4 screenplays and a bunch of essays. And I had a subscription to that. And before The Truman Show movie came out, The Truman Show script was in one of these things, and I read it, and it was like the hair on my arm stood up because I was like, oh shit, is this an extension where they made a movie about the thing that I've been thinking about? Like, is this like an escalation of let's see how he reacts to us acknowledging that he is being observed in the form of this movie? I eventually, I guess I moved away from it, but for a while it was one of those things where, like, if something eerie or inexplicable, or if, like, something would happen in traffic that whatever it was, like just things would happen and I would be like, is this to see how I would react from the perspective of whoever it is that's observing?
What do you think started that? That is such a specific and really like such a main character way of like perceiving the orbit of the universe.
I don't think it was like specifically that it was only me. Like I considered that maybe everybody was being observed, but certainly like I was wondering about it from my point of view. So yeah, I don't know where that comes from. It was just sort of like one of those things that I wondered about, and it kind of got stuck in my head. And it was just when the movie came out, I kind of sat up a little straight in my chair.
That feels almost like a kind of moment of truth, kind of inflection point where there was like a fork in the road where you could have either like saw The Truman Show and ended up making the choices that you did, or you saw The Truman Show and fell down like the wrong chat forum on the internet. And you would be like a forefather of like Q kind of conspiracies kind of thing. Because clearly as a storyteller as well, to have those tools on board with a wealth of conspiratorial thinking could have gone a very different direction.
See, again, that's another reason I'm glad that I sort of like stumbled out of internet connectivity before it became all encompassing.
Well, for the Gary Valentine aspect of that feels like very much a companion to Mitch Kramer.
It does. And there was a moment in that movie where he's like calling Alana, but he doesn't want to say anything. And he's got the phone to his ear, and his little brother that he's sort of babysitting is across the room, and he goes, shh, and he holds his finger up, and the brother just nods like, I get it. And there was a particular moment that I remember very clearly. It was sort of like a United Nations moment. I have 2 younger brothers that are much younger. They're not much younger. They're about 4 years younger. But when you're that age,
my sister's 6 years younger than me, and when I was in middle of high school, she might as well have been like
on
a
another
complete
planet.
Stranger to me. Yeah,
exactly. And so on the younger side of things, we would maybe butt heads a little bit. But when I got to be about like 7th or 8th grade, there was a particular night where I sat them down and we had a meeting, and I was like, guys, look, here's the deal. Starting now, I am going to be smoking cigarettes. I am going to be sneaking out of the house. I'm going to be drinking beer. You are not allowed to tell on me. And they nodded.
Oh, wow. Oh my God,
that.
They bought in?
Yeah. Oh yeah, they were just like, okay. And I was like, if we have problems between us, we'll work it out between us, but telling mom and dad on each other, those days are done. And they were like, okay.
Wow.
And it really was like that going forward. And so when it was one of those moments of watching that movie that I was enjoying for different reasons. But when it got to that scene and the little brother went like that, I was like,
nod.
Yeah, it really took me back to that one night when we had our little sit down, and it was just a delightful moment for me.
I would love to hear a bit about getting a team together, as it were, getting the team together for Toxic Avenger, and what it's like bringing together a group of like department heads and creatives with this kind of mandate that is like, it's so much fun and it's so big and it's kind of so crazy. I want to hear about like people glomming onto that concept. And I've read you talk about like talking to when you pitched this to the studio, and to your surprise, they just kept saying like, yeah, us too. No, we agree. No, we think so too. And I wanted to hear about finding the tribe of people who are on the mandate for the Toxic Avenger 2025.
It all kind of flows downhill from a really great executive at Legendary named Alex Garcia, who's like a legit Trauma super fan who marshaled the partnership with Trauma in the first place and kind of got the ball rolling and kind of brought this whole thing to life. And he was the one that primarily I was speaking to in those early days, where it was not about story, but just tone and the idea that like it's going to be a guy in a suit and it should be very silly and it should be very lighthearted and not self-serious, and just like all of these sort of conceptual things that he was totally into and encouraging of. And so he kind of set the tone, and I went with that. And then what I think it was for me is that I spent a lot of time working on the script, trying to make sure that the tone of the comedy was appropriately communicated in the language, because I wanted the first impression of whoever's reading it, whether it's an actor or a potential crew member or whoever it is, to sort of like we can get into like, okay, and this is I can unpack stuff a little bit, but I wanted the initial read to be like, oh, okay, I understand how the jokes are going to land and how the scenes are going to work without needing a lot of interpretation, because just taken as a straight translation of what is said and done, you could look at that and be like, this seems pretty dumb. Like, is it dumb on purpose, or like what's the texture of it? Like how is it? And so there was a lot of kind of like fussing with the language, maybe unnecessarily, so that all of that was as communicated as clearly as I could think of it in that first impression read of whoever that's reading. And then of course there's a lot of subsequent conversations as you get into whatever that person's going to be doing. But that was the impression, because I mean that was the idea, because I felt like if it doesn't land on that first read, it's going to be hard to reel them back in. And the people I ended up speaking to, either in the cast or in the crew, were all people that responded to the sense of humor. And like some of them knew Toxie from back in the day. Some of them had no idea what it was and were actually like, I didn't even realize there was another movie. Wow. Yeah, so it was sort of like a range of experience with the character. But they came on board because they liked the idea of doing a comedy with this type of an approach, I guess you'd say.
I just have to say that I think my favorite single moment in the movie is just when the crowd, like the citizenry, just starts chanting like mob, 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 and the police officer just holds his gun in the air and basically just says, fuck it, it's a mob, and just fires a shot, and just like is like, well, it's mob time. And I feel like that's just such a keystone moment to the entire energy of the movie. And I don't know why, but I utterly lost it at that, and then did like the 10-second rewind like 3 times just to see that again and again.
Well, I mean, I had mentioned the comedies that we talked about a lot, but also Frankenstein and Bride of Frankenstein were super, those were all over the mood boards. And so, of course, a torch-bearing mob is something I'm very fond of. So.
Who wouldn't be?
Who doesn't love a mob?
I guess my final question to you, and to wrap up, is I would just love to hear you talk, because if Peter Dinklage is such a thespian, and that man, like his all in is just so incredibly enjoyable to watch. And I wanted to hear about finding your Toxie and having it be Peter Dinklage and writing for him and working with him.
Peter, he actually, when the first movie that I did was at a film festival, he was there and he reached out to me and said, like, you want to get some lunch or get a beer or something? And he just wanted to sort of like say that he enjoyed it and just kind of talk.
Yeah.
And so we just sort of like, it wasn't like, all right, we're going to find something to do. It wasn't that at all. It was just sort of like, nice to meet you. I was definitely like, I'm a huge fan. This was also right at I've said this before, but this was right at the time when Game of Thrones was reaching its series climax.
That would have been a nuts outreach to have, like, from him at that time.
He gave me his phone number, and then Sunday nights would come around and I would get all fired up and text him like, are you going to end up on the throne? But what happened was he periodically would send a script for me to read, or I would send him a script to read, just to sort of like shoot the shit a little bit. And so there was a little bit of an avenue of communication there. And so when we kind of knew that we needed a famous face to play Winston to get the movie going, the studio was very supportive of the script, but we needed that casting to kind of actually do it. And I suggested him because what you said, he's such a good actor, and we had a short amount of time at the beginning of the movie before you lose him to the transformation, and I wanted just people to kind of buy into this guy and be on his side and like him and like hanging out with him, and so that was kind of the pitch to him, to play that version of the character. And then there was a brilliant actress named Louisa who was in the suit, and then Peter came back and did the voice. But when Louisa played in the suit, she was doing all of her scenes based on I'm telling it in a complicated version. Peter recorded all of the scenes on video, playing it as Toxie, right, in a rehearsal space, and then Louisa learned all of like how he would swing them up and how he would.
Wow.
So she came in and kind of played his choices or his cadence of speaking, that kind of thing. And then he came in at the end and put his voice back over top of hers. So it was sort of like a teamwork sort of situation.
I'm so glad we got the chance to shout out Louisa for her work as the physicality of the Toxic Avenger in this one.
Yeah. It was great. They were an awesome team, and it was a lot of fun to see them rehearsing together and kind of build it together. But yeah, it was just like I just felt very, very lucky because it's a big gamble for him to put himself in that position. It's sort of like but what happened is once he's attached, Elijah came on very quickly. I'd written that part for him, and so. But other than that, like everybody kind of came on board, and I suspect when you can go to them and say like, and also Peter's playing the lead, then it sort of legitimizes it to a certain extent, and I think that's how we wind up getting to have conversations with people like Kevin Bacon.
Well, that was, I mean, I guess my final thing would be that, like, I could, like, with Dazed and Confused in my mind, I could have pictured it at any point in this movie, just a strange car ride between, like, with, like, Toxie and Taylor Page and Elijah Wood just having the most, like, bullshitting conversation, hanging out, not necessarily smoking weed, but perhaps their equivalent as such. I feel like perhaps they do not seem like close cousins of films, but I feel like I can see the DNA of hangout movies like a Dazed and Confused, and even like a Licorice Pizza, it's largely kind of the same thing. Like you're hanging out with this person through their life. I'm glad to know that Mitch that Mitch is the cool guy that he seems to be in that movie, and that perhaps in his fictional life he went on to make some pretty rad fucking movies with friends later in the future as well. So thank you for your work and for your picks today, Macon Blair.
You're welcome. I'm serving you notice. I'm stealing what you just said. If anybody ever asks me to do a Toxic Avenger sequel, it's not going to be an action movie. It is going to be it's going to be a fucking hangout movie. And it's going to be about like somebody's getting fired from their job and they're not sure how to make rent, and they're hanging out and it's going to be all in one apartment, and it's going to be like Before Sunrise but with Toxie. So
and I hope the adult baby can make an appearance.
Yes, exactly. We'll get them all back, but they're not going to fight. They're just going to hang out and talk about their feelings. So thank you for that idea.
Well, thank you for your time today, Macon. Thank you for your work. I'm really such a fan and so impressed by what you do. So thank you for giving us the things that you do. I truly appreciate it.
That's so kind of you to say. Thank you for having me on the show. I've had a great time talking with y'all.
A massive thank you to Macon Blair. Oh, what a treat. Just one of the most delightful directors out there. I always look forward to the next thing he does, because I never know what it's going to be based on the previous thing. He is just such a utility knife with such a distinct sensibility. I'm so grateful that he was able to take time out for the show. The Toxic Avenger. Really love this. I've thought about it so much since it came out and how endeared it is to me. It is in theaters as of August 29th. Please do go check this wild little number out. That is the weekend this episode drops as well, so you don't even have to wait. You can just get out there, listen to this, and go straight to a theater. Listen to it on the way to a theater. Book the ticket now. A-list, go. And now that one quick thing before we depart. Again, semi-related. This is Toxic Avenger. This Toxie is so much in the spirit of support independent cinema, which we talk about so much on this show. Rightfully so, as we should. We should all be talking about it in the film world all the time. I spent my weekend in a Glendale movie theater in the shadow of the Americana at Brand at the Big Bad Film Festival's 3rd annual edition. And this is an action film festival brought to you by two guys, Powell Robinson and Patrick Young. They're director and DP respectively. And they wanted to celebrate action movies. They wanted to celebrate the kinds of movies that they love. And for all of the wonderful genre film festivals we have out there, and there were so many spaces for horror to exist and thrive in a festival setting and be honored specifically for what it is, we really do not have a commensurate kind of attention for action cinema. Which is an insane thing, because probably equally cinematically enjoyable thing in a theater to watch communally alongside horror is action. And everybody's screaming, "Oh!" together when, you know, a baddie gets a roundhouse kick to the face by the hero. But so yeah, I spent my weekend, 2.5 days, sitting in the same theater with the same delightful action Twitter buddies over and over again, hooting and hollering at the screen. My most anticipated screening was a repertory title, one of my favorite sort of its ilk movies, like the buddy comedy, the 90s action comedy-ish, Showdown in Little Tokyo, starring the dearly departed Brandon Lee and Dolph Lundgren. Absolutely top-notch 90s ridiculousness. Go out, check it out. I'm not going to describe it. We would take too long here. But just an absolute ton of fun. I would say the emotional crown jewel of the weekend was the official cut. The finally assembled, in the wake of his passing, director Albert Pune's beloved take on Captain America from the early 1990s, that the theatrical cut that was released was a butchered version of his dream, and an avid Pune supporter contacted the Pune estate and I believe his widow and helped get them connected with the tech and the resources to scan the canisters of film that Albert Pune carried with him his whole life, basically, after he made the movie, and assembled the Pune cut of this Captain America that is a beautiful and moving rumination on loss and PTSD. And, you know, it is an action movie, and it is fun, and it is zany, but it is also just the story of a man waking up after decades thawed from ice to find everything and everyone and everything he knew is gone, is deceased, is aged. Everything has changed. He wakes up in the late 80s, early 90s, and he was a World War II fighter. And the action, again, it is that kind of movie, but in equal measure, it is a character study of a man coming up against the military-industrial complex and the horror and shock of war and honestly, the ravages of a climate crisis. There's so much beautiful going on in this movie, and it is available on DVD. I do highly recommend searching out the Albert Pune's Captain America and getting the new Blu-ray release, and really treat yourself and honor the vision of Pune as closely as could ever be created from what he hoped that this movie would be. And in addition to that, again, supporting independent cinema, there are new movies coming out from action actor, stuntman extraordinaire Scott Adkins with the movie Prisoner of War. Marco Zaror, a friend of this show who has been on, he has another movie coming out this year called Affinity, and this is his first English language leading role, so a big milestone for Marco. And I just, watching two of the best currently doing it in the stunt space just tear through henchmen, living human special effects as they are. God, it was an honor to see these things on a big screen, knowing that they are straight-to-streaming offerings where so few people will see them play huge and with stunt spectacle that artistic and outstanding and being executed at such a high level. It should be experienced on the big screen. It should not be relegated to something small with only the option to ever watch it on an at-home setup. It was, we ended with SPL2, Time for Consequences, a Tony Jaa classic. I believe it's 10 years old now. It was a blitzkrieg of a weekend with the most wonderful, congenial, supportive group of people. Just every experience I have, I feel like lately, that reinforces the vital role of community and gathering and sharing and joy with other people in a time of such strife and division and violence and fear. God, just going to the movies is one of the best things you can do for yourself in a packed house of people, whether that is laughing alongside 100 others watching the new Naked Gun, or sitting and fist pumping, helicopter arm, hooting and hollering, watching incredible feats of daring do from some of the most elite stunt workers operating today. Support independent cinema, support getting together in person and having a joyous time at the movies. And you can do that with Toxic Avenger too. This is all of a piece. Get out there for Toxie. Get out there for action movies. And that's it. That's our show. You can keep up with us wherever you get your podcasts. Hit the follow button wherever you're listening to get every new episode in your feed as it drops. And you can follow us on Instagram to find out more. We are Feeling Seen Pod. We are also on Blue Sky, where you can just search Feeling Seen. And if you want to find me, I am Jorcru, Jorcru, on Twitter and Blue Sky, mostly Twitter. Just can't quit it. Our theme music is by Andrew Epen. This episode was produced by Marissa Flaxbart. Our senior producers are Kevin Ferguson and Laura Swisher, and this is a production of Maximum Fun.
Maximum Fun,
a worker-owned network
of artist-owned shows, supported directly by you.